Yo, word is up, everybody. I want to go over what I think are going to be the 5 most impactful cards in Frostfall for competitive play in Elestrals. Now, I do want to start with a little bit of a cop-out with a number 6 or an honorable mention here, and that's Chains of Prometheus that you're seeing right now. I don't think it's going to be kind of as impactful as my next 5 cards, mostly because it's going to ebb and flow with counter-rune metas. So the more counter-runes a deck has, the more play this might see, the less... then you'll see less play. If your opponent's running a bunch of them, then you might not want to run as much because you can potentially answer cards in other ways. So I think it's a little bit too much ebb and flow where I don't think it's going to be as impactful as the next 5 cards. That being said, let's just jump into the actual top 5 list, starting with number 5, Galax A. Now there's a few options in Wind, and the reason I chose Galax A is it kind of fills out the Wind Toolbox deck, being one of the top decks right now in the format, in a very helpful way. And as far as the top decks are concerned right now, you know, Thunder Nexus, Earth Beatdown, Wind Toolbox, or Wind Pile decks, the Wind Toolbox deck is the only one really getting useful tools, I think, to add to its strategy that will help it. And Galax A is, I think, one of the poster childs for this. I could have said Nemisail, but I think Galax A is a little bit more useful in kind of the Toolbox deck. That being said, it's more useful because it's another Sorlet type effect. However, the fact that you're not spending Wind Spirits to use this effect is extremely relevant in Wind. When Wind decks tend to spend a lot of Spirits really fast, being able to kind of pull this out, change the stats of an aggressive Celestial like, say, Viserys to 2 defense, or Neckarf to 1 attack, or even target a Sorlet in the mirror match, is extremely relevant. I think going to be extremely useful to kind of deal with your opponent's stuff in a Wind deck without spending as much spirits as Wind likes to normally spend. As well as the fact that this is a card that when you're going up against something that maybe you have 2 spirits on a 1-drop, you can keep an Elestral in defense, or rather in attack position, rather than defense position, so you can attack over it and do damage, and other little niches that might come up there. So I think Galax A is actually going to be an extremely relevant threat in Wind Toolbox decks that helps support the fact that Wind is really expensive while still giving Wind Toolbox the utility that it's really known for. So I think it's a safe bet at number 5 that's going to be actually pretty impactful and a good card, and see a lot of play in basically every Wind deck that runs Aeolus, being a cheap, efficient pseudo removal card. Number 4 I want to talk is Koni. And that's because there's a lot of cards in Frost, or not necessarily a lot of cards in Frost, but enough cards in Frost that want to be added to hand from the Underworld. Starting off with things like Lycan, like Amphrostics, cards that pitch themselves from your hand to do an effect, where you can then recur them and use their effect again, is really powerful. Things like Amphrostics to bring Catarant back, then use Koni to bring Amphrostics back, and get another Celestial in play, maybe Frigicup. Get a lot of regen going there, a pretty wide board. With Lycan form, you can pitch Lycan form, search 2 Mor Frost, Koni, grab Lycan again, and search another 2 Mor Frost to your hand, thinning your deck by 4 cards, adding a bunch of stuff to your hand, and all the other niche little interactions Koni can have. I mean, just as a Nexus bank, Divine Runes are always good, but Kioni's a little bit more put together than most other Divine Runes, making it a pretty relevant threat in any Frost deck. And again, with really powerful effects from hand with 1-drop Elestrals, being able to add them back to your hand and do it again is also looking really powerful in a bunch of different Frost decks. Not just Mor Frost, not just kind of Frost toolboxy Underworld shenanigans or whatnot. Just any Frost deck seeking to use 1-drops, it's going to be a pretty powerful threat, and it's pretty well put together compared to things like Zeus and Demeter not really matching with their element as much. Next up, number 3, I have Dratagua here. I think Dratagua is a little bit of a staple for kind of stall decks. It's the receiver that Water's been asking for the longest time. I think it's going to be able to kind of take that like little guy stall we saw some tournament competitive play with and help boost it to another tier, as well as being able to constantly regen Water every turn with it. That's pretty powerful. Ascending into like a Locagon and then comboing by returning things like Dratagua to field, using Poseidon, you can get lots of pops off. I think it's a versatile tool in any deck that's running Water and any kind of stall deck that wants to regen lots of spirits with a pretty defensive body. So I think Dratagua is going to be pretty meta relevant. I don't know exactly what deck it fits in besides maybe some form of stall, but it's definitely on a point of where like you can get Drautago in play and Aphros in play, and all of a sudden you're drawing 2 cards, recovering 2 every turn. That would be brutal in any control or stall deck. So I think Drautago is going to be extremely meta relevant for that. Number 2, I'm kind of cheating here, and basically every Mor Frost except Terror. It's really hard to pick one. If I had to pick one, it would be Lycan. I did already talk about Lycan with Koni, so I kind of want to say these 3 Mor Frost together is my number 2 pick, just because they kind of engine each other into play, where Lycan searches Indus and A-Bomb, and then you play Indus. If your opponent doesn't want to remove Indus, you ascend over it to A-Bomb, and then A-Bomb brings Indus back, or A-Bomb just gets really big, and then you can bring it back with Koni. And the Mor Frost kind of engine is just really repetitive. It does get taxy, where you're constantly spending 1 for a lot of little effects, but A-Bomb is a recurring threat that will keep coming over and over and over again, and it's set up super well by the rest of the Mor Frost. So I do want to say these 3 Mor Frosts. I guess if I had to pick a number 2, it would be A-Bomb, since A-Bomb is the payoff for the deck. But we're just going to go with Mor Frost. Or I'll just say Mor Frost as an Elestral. That's the number 2 pick. There's 4 cards. Terror doesn't matter as much, but the other 3 are phenomenal and going to make a pretty impactful deck overall, I would say. And then my number 1 pick for the most impactful card for Frostfall will likely be, without much surprise, Lalith. This card is a monster. On its surface, it looks like a normal cast trigger P-Gust, which it is, but the fact that it's a 2-cost Celestial with good attack stat, we can effectively pretend like it's a 1-cost Celestial, giving its casting cost being able to normal cast. So imagine having a 1-cost 6/4 that pops a rune on entering play. That is pretty powerful. So generally when you play it, it's going to pop your opponent's back row and trade with an Elestral or another card in back row, unless your opponent has a perfect solution for the back row, something like maybe they had a poison tipped arrow ready to go, or Gorgons, anything else that's going to pop. Against any deck that's running a Divine Rune, it's basically always online. So going against Earth Beatdown, it's going to be online to pop Demeter or Face Down. Against Thunder Nexus, it's going to be online to get rid of Zeus, get rid of Altar if it's face down, get rid of a lot of things really. And against Wind Toolbox, they're going to have that Aeolus ready to go, some back row. Again, pop a back row, run Lalith over something. You're kind of 2 for 1ing almost always. And in the worst case scenario, you're still 1 for 1ing with the card that costs 2. So Thunderstorm, Earthquake on a stick in a sense. Pop a back row, so it's Thunderstorm on a body. Like, it's, again, same cost as Thunderstorm, comes down with the big body. It's like casting 2 cards at once. There's so many good relevant parts about the card that it's hard to just say what's amazing about it. And I think there's going to be a lot of cases where you potentially go 3 for 1 with this card, where you go play it, pop a shield in back row, that's their only back row, run over something like a Necruff or a Sorlet or Viserys, and then they have to answer it still with another card. So I think there's going to be a lot of cases where it just hits the board mid-game, really, after maybe 1 or 2 counter runes were played, and just run away with just pop back row, swing over something, go hard from there. Lalith is a really powerful card that on the surface just looks like, oh, it's just a bigger P-Gust. And just a bigger P-Gust is extremely relevant and powerful, and I think it's going to be probably the most impactful card in the set. I think you're going to see it, if not in side decks, splashed into almost every deck as like a 2-of with at least 2 Fire Spirits for those times where you go second and they played Zeus, Altar, Elichik maybe, and you go, okay, cool, pop Altar. They're forced to get rid of the Altar, move a bunch of spirits around, and you still have a 4 defense body they can't get over, and their Zeus is gone. So I think it's going to be really impactful, really powerful. Number 1 pick by far. I think it'll be the most impactful card in the set. And that's where we're going to leave off here. So that is the end of the video. I just want to go over what I think my top 5 are. I'm probably going to be doing quite a few top 5 videos over the next few days going over Frostfall. So if you want to see more of that, subscribe. I appreciate your subscription. Getting close to 500. Help me out there. I appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Going to be probably like top 5 cards in the set or something. Or I'm going to be doing a lot of top 5 ideas because there's a lot to talk about Frostfall. I'll see you guys next one. Have a great day.